And last, but certainly not least, David Ball, who will be speaking about the archaeological and biological assessment of submerged landforms off the California and Oregon coasts. David Ball is the Pacific Region Historic Preservation Officer and the Regional Tribal Liaison for the Bureau of Ocean Energy Management. Dave joined BOEM, the Gulf Region Office, in 1999 and transferred to the Pacific Region Office in 2010. He received a Bachelor of Arts degree in Anthropology from Sonoma State University and a Master of Arts degree in Anthropology from Florida State University. Dave has almost 25 years' experience in archaeology and has directed field research on both terrestrial and underwater archaeological sites across the country. He's currently serving a second four-year term on the Board of Directors for the Advisory Council on Underwater Archaeology, an international advisory organization supporting underwater cultural heritage preservation. David Ball.
Well, thanks. Apparently I'm the only thing that's keeping us from here in the reception this afternoon, so I'll try to make it quick. Thanks for inviting, I'd like to thank the organizers for inviting me to come talk today about this project, which was just awarded in August of this year. It's been going on for about 2 months now, so there's not a whole lot of activity I can talk about other than the potential that we have going forward. But before I talk about this current project, I thought it would be good to back up just a little bit and talk about the previous study that was finished in 2013, the inventory and analysis of coastal and submerged archaeological site occurrence on the Pacific Outer Continental Shelf. You can tell by looking at the titles of these things, I need to do something to shorten those names, come up with something a little bit better than a mouthful. This project was basically desktop research to develop, update our baseline information on archaeological resources on the Pacific Outer Continental Shelf, similar to what we had done in the Gulf of Mexico in 2003 and in the Atlantic region in 2012. This 2013 study in the Pacific updated studies that were completed in the Pacific region in 1987 and 1990, and it had three components to it. The first one to update our database of historic shipwrecks and provide it in a format that we could look at geospatially. So it put these resources into a shipwreck, an access database that can be imported into ArcGIS for management and decision making. The second component was looking at coastal properties, more from a viewshed concern for potential offshore renewable energy construction, and looking at properties roughly within about a mile of the coastline. That, you know, part of the significance of those sites was an unobstructed view of the sea. So we developed a geospatial database for that as well. And then the reason why I'm talking about this now is because this third component of this 2013 study also updated our predictive model for submerged prehistoric sites on the Pacific Outer Continental Shelf. And some of the results that came from that study was it looked at digital elevation modeling and updated bathymetric data for geospatial shorelines, and reconstructed those shorelines back in 1,000-year increments back to about 19,000 years ago. It assigned numerical values of 1 through 6 to 10-meter grid squares, with the higher values indicating better resource areas and more favorable areas for site placement. And determined that stream corridors were expected to have the highest likelihood for containing submerged prehistoric sites. And then in this model, the updated model, it demonstrated that the southern portion of the Pacific Outer Continental Shelf had better overall resource potential. However, the southern Pacific Continental Shelf has a narrower shelf and limited stream drainages, and therefore there's actually more higher value areas concentrated in the northern half of the west coast than in the southern half, even though there's better resource potential down there. So that brings us to this current study, and as the title of that suggests, it's a multidisciplinary effort looking at both archaeological and biological components of the submerged landforms off the west coast. It was awarded in August of this year through the California Cooperative Ecosystem Studies Unit to San Diego State University. And unlike the previous studies, 2013 and the 1987-1990 studies, which were desk-based research, this one has a strong field component to it, to actually go out and try to ground truth some of these targets that look like they might have a high potential for submerged landforms. It's a 4-year effort building on the 2013 project and gets at one of BOEM's goals of improving identification of submerged cultural landforms on the Pacific Outer Continental Shelf, and also supports our environmental analysis requirements through the National Environmental Policy Act and National Historic Preservation Act. And we've pulled together, I think, a strong team of researchers for this project. Todd Brady, the principal investigator for the project out of San Diego State, is here today. We also have the California State University of Santa Barbara, Oregon State University, Scripps Institute of Oceanography, the University of Oregon, the Smithsonian, Channel Islands National Park Service, and the Submerged Resources Center of the National Park Service. And then 3 heads of the NOAA Hydra, the Channel Islands National Marine Sanctuary, Jim Delgado with the Maritime Heritage Program, and the Office of Ocean Exploration and Research are all involved in the project. Just to identify some of the geography of the areas for this particular project, we're focusing specifically on the northern Channel Islands off of Southern California and the central Oregon coast, where you see there's quite a bit of shelf that extended out prehistorically about 60 kilometers offshore from the current coastline. And the reason why we selected these 2 locations for the northern Channel Islands, which is comprised of 4 islands currently: San Miguel, Santa Rosa, Santa Cruz, and Anacapa Islands. It shows some of the earliest evidence for maritime culture in the Western Hemisphere, with sites dating back 9,000 to 13,000 years ago, when those 4 islands actually composed one island, which we refer to as Santa Rosa. And as Todd mentioned to me earlier today, there's actually the largest concentration of terminal Pleistocene and early Holocene sites are found in this area, concentrated primarily on toward the western end and on San Miguel Island. And I believe Todd's going to talk a little bit more about the Channel Islands tomorrow, so you get some more information on that. So in addition to the strong evidence of early maritime culture out here, these are also protected areas both through the Channel Islands National Park and the National Marine Sanctuary. And in addition, there's also a lot of oil and gas activity that's occurred off this area for the last 40 or 50 years through the Santa Barbara Channel. I think there's at least 15 oil and gas platforms out there. So there's been a lot of geophysical survey work done in support of those efforts. So we've targeted the Channel Islands for those reasons. The Central Oregon coast we're looking at more as for its potential out there. There's, as you see, the shelf extends quite a bit out that way. There's also a lot of interest now in development of renewable energy activity off the Oregon coast. In fact, we've actually got 2 applications that we're reviewing right now. One for floating wind turbines off the Coos Bay area, which is just to the bottom of just below where you can see in the map here, the image on the far right. And then another application for wave energy off the Newport area, which is just northeast of the Stonewall Bank area. So hasn't been a whole lot of survey activity conducted out there. And so we've identified this area as a target area of interest because it's relatively unknown, so we want to learn more about that area. So what we're hoping to do with the current study is to get at some of BOEM's information needs by providing an assessment of our current geophysical survey guidelines for identifying submerged landforms and sensitive biological features, and also to expand our knowledge base for prehistoric sites on the Pacific Outer Continental Shelf. And this supports some of the other research that BOEM has been doing in mapping of seafloor and hydrocarbon and methane seeps, archaeological inventories, and benthic habitat studies. And it also ties in with some related efforts that we have going on in the Gulf of Mexico region and the Atlantic. In 2007, we funded a cooperative agreement with Louisiana State University to fund Dr. Amanda Evans' dissertation research looking at submerged prehistoric sites off the coasts of Texas and Louisiana. And we currently have an ongoing project, which Doug Harris mentioned this morning, working with the University of Rhode Island and the Narragansett Indian Tribe off of the Atlantic coast, trying to identify best practices for identifying submerged landforms and also incorporating oral history and traditional knowledge into those best practices. And so we're hoping to work with some of the Native American communities on the West Coast in the areas that we're targeting for this project to see if we can incorporate some of those oral histories and traditional knowledge into this project as well. Just real quickly, the objectives, we're looking at field work in high probability areas and field testing a geospatial model for identifying these submerged landforms, improving the regional landscape models to assist in BOEM's decision-making process, and identifying paleolandscape features that may be indicative of sensitive biological habitats. And just to wrap it up quickly, because I know we're short on time, the methods that we're employing and the timeline for this, as I said, the project was awarded in August of this year, and we've already started the first couple of phases of the project, trying to collect all available geophysical survey data and do some analysis on that to refine the 2013 model that was developed. Then we'll go out, target the Channel Islands first in years 1 and 2, do tight grid high resolution survey off the northern Channel Islands in 4 areas, doing 25-meter lane spacing transects over 1,000 square meter areas. From the data that's collected, we'll identify areas for coring, vibrocore and box cores, go out and collect the cores and do the analysis on that. Refine the model that we've developed, and then move in years 2 and 3 up to the Oregon coast to test the model up there and further refine it. And then the final year will be completing the analysis and writing up the reports on the project. So scheduled for completion in August of 2019. So just to wrap up, beyond assisting BOEM in evaluating the potential for encountering cultural resources on the Pacific Outer Continental Shelf during future energy development, the proposed study results will contribute to the Pacific Marine Spatial Planning efforts and a better understanding of submerged landscapes that we're looking at out there. So, thank you.